First thing, as I was saying, Jocelyn, you want to make sure that you have your stone up off the ground. You want to make your curves as simple as you can. So first thing you want is a general outline, which you have. But this is very, see how many pieces there are here? Mm-hmm. You don't need that many pieces. So if I were drawing this curve, I would use my favorite sketching tool, which is interpolate curve and snap. And then I would just draw something that I like. Like that. You probably want this to come underneath the stone a little bit. So, turn on some control points. Just a little bit. Now these don't touch anymore, so I'll have to change that. The fillet set to 0. That'll bring those together. I want to see if it gave me 2 curves. See, it did. I don't want 2 curves. I want a simple, basic curve there. The math is really important. And for a curve that simple, I can do a 4-3, which is always a pretty curve. So I've got that. What made you, how did you draw these? Was this just a series of circles?
No, I do arch.
Okay, did an arc command. Okay, and this is a shape. Okay. Now, the challenge with what Dana has done is that she's created a form that's going to be awkward to work with. I would always recommend that what I would tell you to do is to make one of these and then shape it to do what you want it to do. So I would create one single shape. Maybe something like that. I'm going to want it to be a little bit wide. Better too wide than too narrow, because too narrow, I don't have enough material. Too wide, I have too much. I can live with too much. I'm also going to move these down a little bit because I want a nice smooth connection. I'm just thinking there's a more elegant way to make this. And I'm trying to figure out what that more elegant way would be. Whenever you're trying to make something simple, you try and keep it simple, if that makes any sense. And I think I can probably come pretty close to creating this with a solid. I can probably do a ellipsoid. From like here to like here. something like that. And then I can decide how to make that work for what I want it to do. Have you watched the video I put up on how to work with domes? I put it up yesterday. You're going to want to watch that. It's a good video. So, my challenge with this object is that it's not on any construction plane I can use. And by now, you know Professor Nelson, he digs a construction plane. I am always fussing over construction planes. If I set a seaplane to that, now I have a seaplane that works with this object. And that's important, because if I use non-uniform scale, it's always locked to the current construction plane. So now you can see those handles. See how they're parallel to the grid? That means I know what they're going to do.
Kind of like a top perspective.
Yep. That's giving me more. And then for height, I think maybe something more like that. I'm going to just put some of these out here. To see if I like what I'm getting. Do you find that helpful? And it's not hard to do, right? It's easy to do. So now that I know that's going to work, I want to cut this in half, because I only want the top half of the dome. Cutting plane, and snap. Trim the bottom off. And then in that video, I talk about how to make the surface shrink back. Because right now, if I untrim this, surface, sorry. Where's surface edit tool? Right here. Thank you. And I hit untrim all. It goes back into being that. That means in Rhino's memory, Jocelyn, this will always be that. But if I come back here and click on this tool, right click on it, surface looks the same. But if I untrim it now, it looks like that. If I turn on the control points, they look like that. And the other choice is to left click on it. That does kind of the same thing. You want to look and see which one you like better, but this did the same. So now I'm going to try and rebuild it. So I can get a surface that I can work with in case I want to. Now I'm done with that. The reason I did that, Jocelyn, is so that if I want to come in later and make changes to it, let's put this on a different layer so I'm not competing. Let's say I want to bring that down in elevation at some point. I'll be able to do that. You can't do that with the sphere. It'd be much harder. So cutting it into a simple surface gives me more freedom. If I wanted to, I could select all of those, except for the end ones. Don't want to pick the end ones because that'll lift it off the ground. So if I wanted to, I could do that. Take off the end ones again because I don't want to lift it off. Just as an example of things I could play with. And that kind of stuff would be very hard to do with it as a full ellipsoid. Whereas as this little surface, it's much easier to play with. Okay? So now I'm going to take this and do your pattern with it. I'm going to do that same, I'm going to record history. And I'm going to do that same command, orient 2 points, copy yes, scale no. And I can go into the top viewport for this. And I'm going to pick 2 reference points, and then I'm going to pick 2 target points. And I can do as many of these as I want to. Okay? It's not perfect, right? But it gives me a starting point to look at this thing and see what it is. To make it better, first I've got to remember which one was my first one. You. So I want you in a color I can find. Because now, if I change this one, they all change. And that'll be helpful because I do think I want to play with those control points a little bit. I think it would be cool to bring them down. Maybe. And also like to lift these up. Only want. Not sure what that point is. Okay, apparently it was in your drawing. All right. Scared me a little. That's going to give me a little bit more of a... Now that I've done that and I look at all the other ones, they will have done the same thing. Now I'm going to come back and look at your individual petals. Put your drawing back on for that. It's going to yell at me every time I move one of these. And I'm okay. I don't care. I'm going to set a seaplane. I'm going to have to keep setting seaplanes for each one of these to make it do what I want it to do. But since seaplanes are easy to make, all I'm going to do is make an oval that this sits on using the two ends. I don't care how wide the oval is, it doesn't matter. The seaplane will still follow it. And that's important to me because I want to do my non-uniform scale. No change this direction. But you want that to come all the way back, right? And nothing in the Z. Because that's the first one. I'm going to come over to this guy. I'm going to move him here. It's going to get angry at me. Got to do the same process with the seaplane. Give it an oval that I can assign the seaplane to. Take this and do a non-uniform scale. Now I think this one's a little too narrow. I'm going to fatten it up a little bit. I think the other one was a little too narrow too. I'll go back and fix it. And then we have this one. Set an oval to it. Set a seaplane to that oval. And I can play with this one as well. Okay. So you can see that I am going to end up assigning a seaplane to each and every one of these. Before I do, though, I want to make sure they're in the right position, because there's no point setting a seaplane if I'm going to change the location. So put it in the middle. Take a look and see if I think that's a good angle. I think it's a pretty good angle. And then I'll put a curve tool. Seaplane, oval. Same thing, non-uniform scale. I'm always looking. If I don't want to get wider, I leave that at 1. This one I want longer. This one I want to stay the same height, so I keep it 1. Move to the next one. Now at some point, these are going to be okay. I think this one on are all right. I think this is the last one I have to fuss with. I think it needs to be rotated a little bit too before I make a seaplane for it. Yeah, like that. And now I'm going to make a seaplane for it. Set a seaplane to that oval. So why can I set the seaplane to the curve but not to this? Why can I set the seaplane to this curve but I can't set it to that?
Oh, because that object's
What does a seaplane need?
a seaplane?
Yeah, the key is in the second word.
Plane?
Yeah, what does plane mean in Rhino? Means flat.
What?
This is planar. This is planar. In Rhino it means flat. So when you say seaplane, automatically it's looking for something flat. So it has to be a flat object. It can be flat in dimensional space. This is also planar, the front of the screen. That wall is also planar. That picture frame on the front is also planar, okay? But you can't set it to the surface because the surface is round. Rhino won't know how to set a seaplane to something that does this. It has to be flat. That's why. So, got the seaplane set. And this is the last one I'm going to have to stretch. Keep that the same. A little bit. Oops. My hand hit the wrong button. I have a mouse that has lots of controls on it. It's very fancy. And it was a little too fancy there. Okay, so now this is the new basic thing, right? I'm going to go wireframe. And for each one of these now, I can come back and do more control. I'm going to set a seaplane. You're going to use those seaplanes again and again for each one of these. Turn on the control points. This is a cool toolbar over here. This toolbar you can find under Select. It's the little magnifying glass with loops. It's the lasso points. If you click on the little black triangle, it'll give you that toolbar, and then I just come over here and I slap it on the side. That's really useful because you can use it to select a whole row of points. And once you've got a whole row of points, because the grid, the seaplane matches this, I can just hold down ortho and push. Same thing here. I can grab that point, set of points, because I use an odd number of points, Jocelyn, so I have a center line and a center line. I can snap to that center point, and I can make it narrower here. Right? And that's a different thing than we had before. Each time I've changed one, I'm going to put it on a different layer so I don't get confused as to what I've worked on and what I haven't worked on. And I'm going to lock that layer so that I can't accidentally select that anymore. Going to the next one, wireframe mode, pick its oval, seaplane to object, turn its control points on, grab this row of points, pull them forward. I think that might be okay. I don't know if I need to do, maybe I will taper these down a little bit, all of them. If I want to do it gradually, I'll do one row, deselect that row, do the next row, deselect that row, and do the last row. Okay. Same thing here, but in order to work on this, I can't use this seaplane, can I? Because if I turn on my control points, and I grab that same row of points, Jocelyn, and I hold down my shift key so I can move them straight, are they going to go this way? No, they're going to go that way. They're going to follow the seaplane. And that, can you see the grid? See how it's following the grid? It can't go any other way as long as I'm holding shift key. Now I can try and do it by eye, but that's a mess. Whereas if I just select its oval that I made for it, and set a seaplane to it, now I can grab those points, use my shift key, move them forward. Easy. I'll do the same thing I did on the last one. I'll grab those 3 rows of points, do a non-uniform scale, deselect. Oh, didn't want to do that. And instead of deselecting it, I'll just select the next two. Non-uniform scale. And that's probably enough. Now for a maquette, this is pretty detailed. This is probably more detailed than you would ever have to do. Is it taking me very long?
To do?
Yeah. No, it's not. Setting a seaplane, turning on my points, grabbing the points, moving them. Actually, this one I'm probably going to want to grab this row of points and move it too. It's just a little too pointy. I think the width on that one is okay. So, that's my new set of stuff. Okay? Now what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to put a cap on the back of each one of these so they're a solid object. Because they're all flat and open on the back. And if it's flat and open, Rhino can work with that. Solid cap planar holes. Solid union. Now I'll come in and take the bottoms off. I only put bottoms on it so I could Boolean union it. I don't really want bottoms yet because there's no thickness yet. So get rid of all of those little pieces. Do you understand what I'm doing with that? I'm right-clicked on this. If you right-click on it, it extracts a surface. And then I can choose whether I want a copy of the surface or not. I'm saying copy no, so it'll strip it off, and then I'm deleting it. Because what I want to see is just this kind of open shell shape. I'm going to grab all of those, duplicate the edge, and I'm going to extrude it straight down. Maybe about that thick. 1.5? Does that look thick enough? What thickness, what looks good to you?
0.5?
That's too thin. Just do it by eye. You're the designer. Does that look about as thick as you want it? Or do you want it thinner? About here? Okay, fine. So you've got that. Join that together. Put a cap on the back of that. Where to go? Cap planar holes. And there's your cake. It's not perfect. It has problems. But you wouldn't want to do any more time than this on a maquette. This is just to show yourself, do you like it? That's its only purpose, is for you to be able to look at it and go, do I like where that's going? And then in your case, you have a couple of more steps to do because you already know what you want the outline to be. Right? So I'm going to grab those two things, join them together. I don't need that big line going around the outside edge anymore. And I'm going to extrude.
Oh, and then you can cut it?
And then I can cut it, you bet. Solid difference. It says no. And the reason it says no is see how that doesn't come all the way through? It has to reach. So explode it. Surface, you can't extend a surface that's joined to another surface. But once I explode it, I can use the extend surface command, select the edge I want to extend, and hit enter. Now I can join those back together. It doesn't want to join back together. Well, that's rude.
Cut separately, or
So let's see. Oh, it's because there's a little teeny thin surface. That's annoying, but okay. Join you to you to you. Fine. I need to check the direction on this because I want it to point towards what I want it to keep. And I want to keep this, so that's good. Solid difference. Okay. Now there are some problems. You don't really want this thing curving like that. You would want to do some individual sweeps and get this really pretty for your finished model. But you're not doing a finished model. You're doing a design. So you can make these lines pretty with your pencil, right? This just tells you the thickness. Tells you if it's going to work or not.
I'm just looking at the side thing.
Yeah. And now you can tell if it's deep enough for your stone. You can go a little bit, actually you would probably pick this up so that the bottom of it is the same as the seaplane. So if I want to move this up exactly to the seaplane, I'm going to use a point object as a helper. I'm going to put that point object right there. And then I'm going to project that to the seaplane without making a copy of it. And then I can just use point snap, move it from here to there. Delete the points. So now I can look at it from the side. And that's about right. I don't think you would want the stone any deeper than that. It's still not running into the stone, but you could connect it to the stone with an under bezel and that sort of thing. That is not a bad little maquette.
I don't need to make the under bezel.
No, you can draw it. Now that you understand what an under bezel is, you only have to make what you need to make. If you don't understand the under bezel, make it. If you understand it, draw it. Right? Because making takes more time than drawing. And you're designing in this class, so you want to move as quick as you can. This is a decent maquette. Helpful? And you can see if you compare these are much lumpier, frumpier, stranger shapes than these are. And before I Boolean them all together, I could work with each one individually with control points. I could change it how it looked. These are very difficult objects to work with. If you turn on the control points here, that's a very strange object to try and work with.
But how does she do this?
Oh, she did this with a surface from curve network. Curve here, curve down the middle, curve there, cross sections, and then surface from curve network to create it. But it's just a more rigid surface than you needed for the maquette. The ellipsoids were more forgiving to play with. Okay, I gotta go. Meeting time for me. I will save this. Desktop.
Upload it to YouTube.
This I'll just send you. Am I spelling your name right? It's E, then L-Y-N. And O-H means office hour. Okay, so that I can send to you. I will stop this recording.